Okay, so now the previous layers have nicely dried. I have sealed it over with another layer of Mod Podge, and the substitute for which is glue. Any craft PVA white colored glue would work just fine for this entire project. Now in this step, I'm going to paint this collage using watercolors. You're going to need an assortment of fine tip brushes and some larger ones to do the larger sections of the canvas. Okay, so the colors I will be using are blue and red, but feel free to choose any color that you like, any of your favorite colors, but try not to go too try not to use too many colors. Okay, just try to keep things simple and use just one or two colors and white. So what I'm doing is adding a very thin coat of watercolor paint. Now you're going to need to be a bit light-handed for this step and not use too much of water, because that might destroy the paper and start lifting off the previous layers. So try to just use only as much water as you need to spread the pigment onto the surface. Might switch brushes here. Want something that's a little bit more flatter. So that's a synthetic brush I have there. I have swapped to a synthetic brush because the squirrel mop brush is loading up too much of water, which is something that's not desirable for this project. So I've just swapped brush. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is add some pink magenta, something that's pink with a warm red. So I'm not sure what this red is on my palette. It could be a vermilion or a scarlet, but I want to use both types of red. One is warm, one is a bit more cooler. And just a quick note, if you're using watercolors, you can re-wet your paints and use them as long as they haven't formed mud in a section. If they're clean in their own dedicated spots, just use water and they'll come back to life. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is just add red, maybe here. I want that side to be brighter than this side, and I'm going to be careful, and you need to be careful when you're using watercolors to leave a thin line so that the red doesn't mix with the blue. If it does mix up, you'll just need to sort of come back once the colors dry and repaint over it with a thick layer of white or something to cover it. Okay, and then that side of the heart, I'm just going to use the cooler red. I'm going to let that dry, and once that's dry, I'm going to come back and add more details. So I love the way how the red and the blue look together. The next thing that I'm going to do is, when the blue is sort of semi-wet, I'm going to come back on top of it and add some white color. You could use anything that's white, acrylic paint or even gesso if you have that in your stash, but the idea is to just create these variations in color, and also to sort of reduce the busyness of the painting. So I'm going to take more white because I want the white to be really intense. I'm actually going to go right on top there. Now what I'm doing is, if you remember, we added some serviettes here between the paper cutouts. That has sort of created this lovely texture, and I actually want to emphasize that. So using a dry brush or even your fingers, all you're going to do is gently touch that area, and that's going to give you some really lovely textures. And textures actually really help to make collages dimensional. Now that brush is wet, so I'm going to swap to a dry brush and try to lift off some of that paint when it's still wet, and bring it to some other sections of the painting. Again, remember not to sort of cover each and every section of the painting. All you're doing right now is trying to reduce the busyness of the painting without losing all the textures underneath. All right, so I'm going to clean my brush and then just lift off some of the white from there, and gently, very gently create these brush marks on the bottom section. See, I'm getting the gorgeous textures over there as well, but I'm being very light-handed here to lift those textures and get them up and make them look more prominent. And I'm going horizontally now to sort of create a weave. I'm being careful not to come into the red area. Now that is starting to look really nice and less busy. One thing I just might try out, and just as an experiment, and I do recommend experimenting without fear that you're going to muck up the painting, because otherwise you don't learn, is just try and dab a dry paper towel to see if I can get back some of the brown text, just some of them. The idea of using white was to push everything to the back, all the busy layers to the back, and make the artwork more cohesive. Right, I like the way how it's looking so far. The next thing to do would be to really let all of this be bone dry, because then we are going to come and tease out the heart shape and emphasize some sections, whereas see where else we can tweak things to make things look more cohesive. Okay, so it is a bit of a back and forth process, but that's the beauty. If you make mistakes, there's still room to sort of try out something else to fix things or take it on a way that's different, new and exciting.